Hello, my name's Leon,
I'm Pablo.
and today we're on the boost, doing the boost.
We're doing the boost.
We're doing the boost at Geekdom again. A little bit of a time since we've actually sat down and did a one-on-one.
It's been a while.
Yeah, and the big conversation really for us today is AI internationalization.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah, that was a 4 or 5 syllable word. It's hard. But they kind of play hand in hand. You know, Super Bowl was yesterday.
It was.
Today's a holiday. It should be a holiday.
Go Eagles.
Yes, they won, just destroyed the Chiefs.
Just to be clear, I'm a Ravens and a Washington Commanders fan, just because I was raised on the East Coast. But I got to root for the. I personally was just like, okay, too many Chiefs.
Yes,
too many Chiefs going on.
Yes, they've won too many times. I was there for the commercials. I don't really do the sports ball.
Did you like the commercials this year?
No, they weren't as good. The one that I was focused on because of the convo that we're having was the OpenAI ChatGPT ad, which for an $8 million ad or $7 million, whatever.
Wasn't that impressive?
No, it wasn't. Considering it was like, it's the little dot, the through line of the dot, and it's like from Indians and caveman all the way till the AI. I just didn't think it really showed people what the product does. Most people don't know what it does.
Isn't that ChatGPT though? I mean, it feels like ChatGPT doesn't quite explain itself all that well, and people have and by the way, this is the whole reason we're having this conversation. We did our workshop on the very thing. There's not really like a guide, right?
No, there's a whole industry popping up called chat prompting or prompt engineers.
Right.
There is every single product adding AI onto it, and a lot of people have a flavor of it that I think is kind of the cheating way, is they just add on, a chat interface and say you can chat with it. Yep.
It's bolted on services. Look, I don't want to say anything offensive because obviously there's lots of geekdom, and in San Antonio companies that are focused on AI. But
when done right, it's good though.
Right, but the thing is, when people call them prompt engineers, you're just really good at asking specific questions that a computer can understand, right?
Yeah, it's a fancy title for you're really good at Googling, you're really good at talking to the AI.
Right.
Like, that was a skill before that was just embedded in the workforce.
But also, there's another piece, though. It's like also like getting the threading, right, of the prompting. Like, for example, what I mean by threading is, okay, you ask it to do one thing, and then you ask it to do another, and then another, and then another. And the thing is most people don't recognize or realize that the AI gets lost, right? They just keep asking and keep asking, and then they don't realize that, and actually I learned this very recently from Dirk Ummendorf. I sat down with him. He said, most people don't realize that AI has a capacity issue. It will not just simply take what you say to it and remember it all. And I started recognizing this when I was uploading documents for review, for producing, material for a client. And I was just trying to organize my thoughts, get everything kind of squared up. And then I kept referencing previous documents that we included or that I had included for continuing the conversation. And it kept saying, oh, due to the reset, due to the and I was like, what reset? What are you talking about? What reset? So the AI has to reset between prompts in order to track enough information. And then after a while, if you give it too much to look through, it gets lost.
It's just like a human.
True.
In the end, it's like if you give a human 5 documents, might remember 2 of them. The AI is good in a lot of ways, but the strawberry example is my favorite thing. Is if you asked it how many R's there were, it was like 2 or 3 or 1. It was never the right amount of R's, which was
3. Right.
It would always be wrong because it struggles at these basic things sometimes. So that's why a human intervention is always needed.
Absolutely. But the thing is that most business owners, when they're using AI, they come to the conclusion that I need it.
Yeah.
The questions we always get, which is, which one? How do I need it?
Yeah.
Right? How do I get it to replace things that I do or people that I work with, which is common. But the thing is it's not just like a one clear-cut answer for anybody, right? I mean, some people use AI for very simplistic things, which I think are the easier applications.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about really like complicated, like step-by-step chaining events, that's where most people like lose its true capabilities because they're not far enough down the production or development, life cycle to understand how to like leverage that. And
it didn't get good at handling that until the recent one, which is like the 4-0 model that ChatGPT has. I think Claude has a really good model that can do like chaining and all of that. The other part of it too is the thought reasoning around it is it struggles. It doesn't always know what it wants to think and how it needs to think. So the prompt has to tell it what is it thinking like, who is it thinking like.
Correct.
All of those systems, and I think a lot of people don't realize it's like talking to a person with way more instruction.
A high schooler with lots of information is kind of the it's kind of like my basic explanation. The high schooler has lots of knowledge but does not know what to do with it, right? So you have to kind of guide it, at the same time provide that human intervention, which requires the rails that it needs to travel, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is a lot of people, they don't recognize the fact that they need to provide those guardrails. Because if they don't, and they sort of just cede authority and they just start asking it random stuff, it's going to give you random responses. Yeah. And if you don't review it and you put that stuff out, man, it can be embarrassing. In some cases, for some businesses, even fatal.
Yes.
So
we saw the example of the lawyer cite a fake case, didn't realize it, didn't know it. We saw Air Canada give a refund or money back, and it wasn't in the
from the AI chat.
Yeah, the refund policy wasn't there.
Right.
There is like a new lingo called AI agents that are specifically really good at chaining together series of actions. It's still not perfect. In our presentation, we talked about Klarna. They're using it for something relatively low stakes, but they're also using it as a process to say, hey, what's your problem?
Right.
Here's the help you need, with a little bit more than just a chat bot that kind of gives you a dumb answer.
Yeah. I mean, there's other applications that I've seen that I'd say kind of straddles the line of a little bit of danger that is unforeseen. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I'm working with a platform right now that's using AI chat for just resource conversations. Like, if you start asking it questions about how to do certain things, or, hey, I can't get into my account, or certain things like that. It's really good at those very like black and white answers. Yeah. But then there are those things where the answers don't exist until someone goes in and researches those answers. Like, I'll give an example. I'll say something like, hey, I want to merge two accounts. I've got an account over here and an account over there, and I want to now get rid of one account, but I want to move all my other stuff over. And the answers that were provided were very matter of fact, to the point where like you're giving at that point poor customer service. Yeah. Right? So you're taking a client that is potentially, and I won't name the company, but you're taking a client that's now paying for one or more accounts. You're starting to find a way to like, okay, I want to facilitate my engagement with you, Mr. or Mrs. Company, and I need you to help me transition, right? And yes, the chatbot will give you the answers, again, black and white, but when the frustration level starts going up, the chatbot will not recognize that, right? A human is required to determine, okay, the intention on this conversation is now getting a little off the rails. Let me escalate this, and it doesn't get escalated, right? And then by the time you are escalated, you're upset, and you've been dealing with a chatbot. Yeah. Like, how can you get mad that you're dealing with but our expectations right now are immediacy, right? So for the goal of immediate customer response, we're putting in these AI bots, and it's almost like causing an opposite effect of what you're hoping for. Yeah. Right? You're lessening the load on your team to deal with those things, but you're opening yourself up to other things, right? I mean, that's just one example where it can be, a bit dangerous for a company if you're not like handling with care.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to turn into a cultural thing where you're just like, I don't want to talk to the AI. I want to talk to the human. And, we've seen all the movies where support and everything to government is AI run, where you're just like human, looking for the trigger word. It's just the same thing that we do on a phone tree where we're saying, talk to human, talk to support rep, like find me a person, help,
I hack that stuff like right away. Like I'm like, talk to an agent. I don't even like go through the phone tree. So if I can help it.
You can do that on a lot of those AI chat tools, and some really smart people manage to break it and kind of get you to give what the prompts were and everything in the back end. So it's going to be an important part. I actually think we're in San Antonio. Rackspace was all about fanatical support.
Right.
I think we're going to see resurgences of companies go, we're using AI to process data and everything else is human. Like, we're going to see it more and more. I think people are kind of like rejecting like the coding with AI, saying like, we're not going to do it this way. We're going to leverage it in a way that's not just like a robot's coding a robot. Again and again, it's a snake eats its own tail at some point. I think a large part of this is, and Sam Altman is a proponent of this, is we just don't know what's kind of happening. Like, we don't know. I loved, there was a TikTok yesterday of like, did we invent AI or did we discover AI? And it's kind of like the discussion of electricity. We didn't make electricity. We just discovered it. Like, did we just discover that we had enough technology to make AI?
Sure.
And I think until we can figure out and get to the next step of like, oh, hey, how do we mold this? We're going to have somewhat dumb AI agents and bots kind of like pushing us around. And I saw a video this morning is when you ask AI right now, there's a definitive answer and it makes it look like an authoritative answer. Sometimes it's really far off. So more now it's about a human going and thinking through that. Does that sound right? What are the sources? Can I do that? We're going to see a lot more of that. And we used to do it with Google of 10 results. How are we going to determine which one's the most accurate? We had HTTPS. We had authoritative domains, .gov, .edu. With AI, it's almost a go back and do a Google search afterwards and validate it. When some of the companies, though, do bolt it on, the parts that I like is they tailor it really tightly to what you're doing. So if you're going to be writing about social media, you're only writing about social media. They take a little part of it and kind of like make it dumb. They put it in there. Same thing I've seen, companies in geekdom where you're writing grants. The grant application process, pretty, process driven. You got to check the boxes with what you're writing. And AI could be dumbed down to do that over and over and over again.
Sure.
And it kind of is a dumbing of it in a lot of ways. It's more of a niching down of it because right now AI is a really broad, smart kind of jack of all trades person.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the other aspect of, back to you were talking about agents. Right now we're talking about consumers interacting with a business's AI.
Yeah.
But at some point, agents will start operating on behalf of consumers. So then you're going to have AIs just doing the work.
It's happening a little bit.
Sure.
Google's doing it with phone calls where you can make reservations.
Yeah.
It'll call the restaurant will book you, you'll have it. It's a little weird. I imagine on the server side answering the phone and being like, oh, it's Google again, making a reservation for somebody. I think that there's going to be a push away from all of that and more on the data processing, more on the automations of an employee. I think it's going to be way less consumer-facing tools.
Possibly. I feel like
it's kind of like the Salesforce ad. Did you see that in the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Do you, based on that ad, did you know what Salesforce did? I had no idea.
I mean,
like I know what they do, but I'm like,
you're trying to understand what that was.
I was like, what was that? Like, they don't make the planes fly. They're like not booking all of that. But I think it's going to become a like technology, kind of like internet protocol. Everybody knows what it is. They type in a domain. There's DNS in the background. I think that's what is going to happen with AI more and more, and it's going to become a business-to-business tool where, they're using it at Walmart to order the products, kind of expect stuff, interface with the employee to say, hey, you need to go check this stuff and chat back. I think it might come into consumer space of maybe like fridges or stuff like that. But
I mean, here's the thing. AI and all of its iterations are certainly to some degree, probably some high degree for efficiency.
Yeah.
But time consumption and time savings is the one resource that we do not have infinite amounts of in any lifetime, right? So how often do we want to sit, for example, waiting in line at a bank? I mean, you hear the terms of like, oh, people wait in line for years, waiting for services or waiting on the phone or on hold. Or I have to tell you, as a consumer, I love, hey, when an agent is available, we'll call you back.
Yes.
You know what? That's amazing. I love that. That to me is like proactive AI customer servicing. Like, okay, let's just go ahead and do that. I'll take the call when it comes in, But I think to a larger degree, like in order for AI to truly be successful, it has to become a accepted mass adoption tool, right? And we use AI as like this all-encompassing thing. But in the end, I mean, I look at it as like, okay, there are really thousands of different tools that fall under a category, right? They all do different things. Companies that are building solutions are around, they're trying to solve a problem using more automation. But I think once you have the average Joe that does not even look at technology as like a day-to-day activity, right? I mean, we are obviously highly technical just because we're in the space every single day. But there's lots of people, including many of our clients, people that we would expect to be highly technical, and they are not. Yet they all know that their time is valuable. They want to get more done in a shorter amount of time. And, I think there's probably going to be a little bit of a lot of the B2B side of things, obviously. That's going to drive a ton because that's going to really is what's going to push the adoption.
Yeah.
And then adoption, like right now I have my app on my phone, for ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and you start asking for it to do things for you. I can't tell you the last time I've actually gone in to my phone to do a search on Google, like for anything.
Yeah.
I just don't.
It's both an indictment of how bad Google is today, and then the fact that these tools do give you an answer that
I appreciate that there's no ads. I mean, oddly enough, and at some point there's going to be ads, right? In order to get the answer, look at this ad. I mean,
because it's
coming. It's got to be monetized somehow.
They're going to have to, unless they sell the data or process the data. But I think where a lot of these tools are going to win or lose is can they monetize it?
Yeah.
And then can they build the tools for the creators, for the businesses that are pumping the data in to understand how their data is being displayed?
Sure.
I think right now, Google makes up like 20% of the internet.
Yeah.
Everybody visits it in a given day probably once.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is about 2.1%. So huge growth there. I think that Super Bowl ad's the first step to bringing that mass adoption.
Right.
Again, the ad, not the best. I think it was more Apple aspirational than it was actually, hey, this is what we're going to show you how to do it. I think Google's ad on their Gemini was a little bit more in line. I don't think it appealed to just everybody. It was a little bit like politically leaning one way. And that just, it creates a lot of rifts of like, oh no, I don't want to use Google's because of these unclear bias. But as soon as there's a tool out there that everyone's like, I think Apple's doing it with Siri and their Apple Intelligence.
Yeah.
As soon as it's just built into your phone, it's like you're using it. A lot of people use it every single day. They don't realize it. Scheduling a calendar. There's a lot of like AI tools in that now.
So many.
Yeah. If you interact with email marketing anyway, there's so many ways to personalize it. It's layering in AI. There's just a lot of ways that they're doing it, even on the banking side. I know that Stripe and all of these other companies are using AI to look at what's fraud, what's not, and then even on the credit card, like for example, if you leave a tip at a bar, Capital One's using AI to say, hey, what's more than 20%? that's just machine learning to say,
Right.
hey, it's more than 20% of what you're doing. But they're using AI chatbot to come and tell you, hey, was this fraud? Was this not?
accurate? Right. Right.
So I think it's going to come slowly. It's like Facebook's doing it. I think Facebook's doing it in the wrong way. They're like, you can chat with an AI Kardashian bot versus some of the other ways. The one thing I do like is their AI summaries of comments.
Yes.
I love to go read that because I'm like, okay, what are all the angles? And then I can go scroll and look for the different comments to say, are people mad, people not? I think that's a really cool way of using it. I also think Facebook's largely using AI in their ad department to do way better targeting.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
true.
think that's where a lot of people, again, AI is going to be a business tool more than anything. How do you target people when you go to HEB here? Oh, hey, you always make a route every single time. I guarantee you at some point they're going to be tracking you with the cameras and say, I know that he's doing that route through the store. Let's display a better, like coupon setup or sale deals, all of that. I think that's where it comes from. And I think most people don't want to hear that. I think most people want a tool that can, the example is if you have live ChatGPT right here, you could be doing an interview and have it fact check, have it, give you input.
Sure.
Is it all accurate? No, but it helps you look smarter, process things, especially just as a human. It's like,
and you
just
can learn
10
on the
input.
fly,
Yes.
right? You can learn more on the fly. Well, let's talk about the workshop that we did last week here at Geekdom.
Yes, it was a great turnout.
Yeah.
I think like 20 to 30 people. So for a Wednesday at lunchtime was really
That
great
was great.
turnout.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the direction we took was a little bit more beginner AI.
Yeah.
How to implement it, what tools to use. We talked a little bit more about automation too, CRMs,
That's right.
HubSpot marketing, specifically tailored to how do you integrate AI to your business. I think a lot of people are solopreneurs. Maybe they're building their team just now, but a lot of their questions were more advanced. How to feed it the right data, how to string along.
How to learn to use it, right? Which I feel like right now, it feels like that is the level most businesses are in, unless AI is their business, which is still a very small percentage of the businesses out there today.
And a lot of startups are not AI startups.
No.
They are startups with AI bolted on.
Yeah.
They're using a ChatGPT, a Claude, maybe DeepSeek, an API of some sort, and pooling from that to do all of their AI integration.
Correct.
So they're not really the backbone of the AI. They're just trying to figure out what's the best way to implement it.
Yeah.
A business owner that owns a car repair shop, they're like, how do I get phone calls to be sorted? How do I email customers better? How do I schedule better? They're using it for those reasons. A startup that's doing it is thinking about how do I give those tools to that auto shop and doing it in a way that one person can handle it versus the owner going and hiring another person to handle just that. And then all of a sudden your team grows. There is a little bit of efficiency point, but it's also gives that owner the ability to jump in and do something that they probably wouldn't have been able to do before.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I kind of see I mentioned earlier, just from my perspective, using AI for more efficiency, saving time. But there's also, AI shoppers where you can say, hey, I want to save money as a household. I want to find deals on particular things and I don't want to look for them all. Where can I find them? How do I order them?
I was doing that the other day, and I actually talked to somebody about this, and this is where I got the idea from. Was she was shopping for couches on Amazon, and just went and asked ChatGPT, here are the measurements I need, here's kind of the room layout, what couch fits best, and then gave her a list of them. You could have done that on Amazon. It would have been a one by one, get the measurements, check.
Right.
The measurements are always in different spots on Amazon, but ChatGPT just told you the measurements of each. I validated all of them, and then interesting thing, they all had UTMs saying ChatGPT, which I thought was pretty interesting.
That is really cool. Actually, that's funny because tracking for ChatGPT and how do you do advertising for tracking and attracting, bots.
Yeah. The interesting part on the advertising front is the fact that an AI is the definitive answer. How do you put an ad in that?
Right. Yeah.
So I think they're going to have to sort through that. Google hasn't figured it out.
No.
And they have the best way to figure it out. They have a inventory of it. Facebook hasn't figured it out. They have the best inventory.
Mm-hmm.
But during that workshop, one of the conversations after was with a marketer of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, everyone's asking me about search engine optimization, but they're calling it, AI optimization. Like, have you dealt with any of that?
Right.
And I was like, yes and no. Like right now, all we know is it's pulling from Google searches very similarly. The big part was answer a question. Like, if you have a question, write a blog about it, answer it right away, and then add the SEO fluff for you. You'll probably rank really high on ChatGPT for it. And then Google. We don't have as much data and tools to say this is what affects it. And I'm sure some people are starting to hack their way into like AI optimization, but everyone's asking, how do I show up on AI? How do I integrate it in there? And then what do I do once it's integrated? Like, what's the next step? How advanced can I get with this?
Does Google Analytics and Search Console actually report on any of the, major AI platforms? Like, because I know looking at data, I use, ChatGPT, for example, to crawl particular websites that I am tracking data for.
Yeah.
I don't see them registered. They come in, they might come in as maybe unassigned. They don't have
now
undefined
analytics
information.
is picking up on that UTM now.
Yeah.
I've seen that in there, but Search Console, it's just Google organic search.
Yeah.
Google needs to build a tool for Gemini to show how many times you showed up in Gemini.
Sure.
Like, I think the best thing that OpenAI could do is give tools to the publishers and the creators out there that are optimizing and building that. Let a little ecosystem foster, and I guarantee you everyone's going to care about it because they're going to be like, hey, how do I show up in ChatGPT?
Yeah.
How do I do that? How do I show up on Gemini #1?
Yeah.
It's a fuzzy answer right now.
That's very true. And obviously, I think we're going to probably be talking a lot more about this stuff. I think in general, there is no one answer. And obviously, this is going to be very fluid as far as how AI, kind of integrates into just daily life.
It hit the market 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
AI was had through voice for a little bit.
Yeah.
That was dumb AI. It was okay. This is the closest that we're getting to, hey, this is actually pretty useful.
Yeah.
Like, let me ask it to write something for me. Let me ask it to validate data. I've been using it a lot to take all the social media posts and say, hey, what's the best time to post?
Yeah.
What's the audience off of this data? Like, can you mesh all this together? Use it a lot in data entry. Can you separate the first name, last name, email? And then, hey, by the way, can you set that up so that every email is first name, last name, period at whatever company?
Right.
And there's a lot of that. I'm kind of against the creative part of it. I don't like that it writes. I don't like that it creates images. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
But
opens up the door for a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and then it's also just what's happening on Google. You go to ChatGPT. If you're just writing everything with AI, sooner or later the AI is training off the AI. It's a snake eating its own tail. And what's the quality? So I think there's a lot to wrangle with, and how do you integrate it into your business is a big one, but also like the ethical and the moral dilemmas of like, if I integrate AI, I don't need to hire more people. Normally that would have been the case. You went from a 10-person company to 15. You might go from a 10 to 12 and have...
But still do the 15 people work.
Like, do you distribute that money to everybody? How do you kind of handle that? Maybe it's profit shares. I've seen some companies talk about it, even like Buffer, where they're just like, hey, we're just going to profit share versus... just increasing salaries and doing all this. That's profit. And if we can maximize with less people, everybody wins.
Sure. I know we said we were going to talk about internationalization. We might want to touch base on that a little bit. Otherwise, false advertising. So just to change topics really quickly on internationalization. So right now, because of the political climate, here in San Antonio, but I think in Texas, and I would venture to say probably any bordering country to Mexico, and maybe even Canada, there is more activity of companies that are starting to move their operations nearshoring in the opposite direction into the U.S., right? So we've had some conversations now through, my travel to Mexico City and some of the conversations that I started, with companies that are looking to start operations in the U.S. I think there's more of this political pressure now to have physical space here in the country to start trying to avoid some of these tariffs, all these talk of tariffs. It's scary. It will close, certain operations down completely in the country if we're not placing those orders because the expenses go up. So because of that, the shift and the push is to move operations into Texas. Here in San Antonio in particular, I've had conversations just in the past few months with my 5 or 6 different companies that are interested in selling in the U.S. They're either already here or they're planning on being here very soon.
Yeah.
So, I feel like kind of back to this AI thing, right? Part of it is also like, okay, how do we do business internationally where maybe we don't know the language of the country in which they're coming from, or vice versa. They're coming here and don't necessarily know how to do business in the U.S. So, but you have to deliver services that works probably not just in the U.S., but maybe in the country that they're from, because they're buying services to sell in this market. But the one thing that I've learned, and this is not to say that, look, Latin America has a lot of, I'd say advantages, cost-wise, skills-wise in some cases, to using resources across, the world from other parts of the world, right? That could be either cheaper but significantly more difficult to work with.
Yeah.
But the thing that they're looking to accomplish is they're looking to engage with a market that's the largest economy in the world, which is ours, right? Many times they don't really know how to sell here, right? So when they come and start asking questions about how to engage with an American audience for sales purposes, for B2B purposes, that's really opening up a huge opportunity for companies here to not just educate, but to facilitate and help these companies implement quickly. That's another reason why AI is helpful.
Yeah.
Why? Because you might be doing business with somebody that maybe doesn't have the best English.
No.
But yet they've got the resources to start services here. How do you become a conduit for that conversation? I'm having these conversations completely in Spanish.
Yeah.
And I told this story in the workshop. I used Fathom, right? I used Fathom for my meeting notes.
Yeah, it's Fathom Video.
Fathom Video. I used it for, my conversation was about an hour long. And then when it gave me my summary was in English. It translated, summarized, and gave me all of the follow-ups that were needed in English. And I was like, man, this is really cool, because now it's giving me the ability to participate in a meeting. Let's just say I didn't speak Spanish and I was speaking solely English and other people were speaking Spanish. The language could be jumped back and forth in that meeting as long as I had somebody that could, get me over the hump on some things.
Yeah.
And the summary and everything that I'm getting, the information, feedback that I'm getting from that meeting, now I can actually do business pretty consistently without the need to have to speak the language.
Then take the notes and give it to a team member that's English speaking. It makes it so much faster.
Exactly.
There's a geekdom startup here that's doing it the opposite way. They're taking neo banks here in the United States and trying to take it into Latin America.
Yeah,
they're doing the same thing, going and and you've talked to them of trying to figure out how to take that stuff in there and using AI to look at regulations and how do they translate best for that. What are the kind of nuances with culture in each country?
Yeah,
what are the regulatory agencies? So they're taking the same tact and going another direction, but there is a lot of conversation about how to tap into the Latin American market,
right,
on both ways, whether it's nearshoring and they're coming out, And then those nearshoring conversations that you've had and those talks that you've done have gone the other way, where a lot of those Mexican companies are like, yeah, you guys are coming, but it is the biggest market, you know.
Right.
And how do they enter? They never know.
Right.
They don't know the nuances that are American sales, and haggling for different things, and how to deal with that, how to deal with the culture differences between Texas and California, or
Right.
even in Illinois or Florida. It's like the small nuances that they just don't know. I think
Right.
that transcription part is the coolest, though, because
Yeah.
you really can get off the meeting, and especially if Spanish isn't the easiest to write in and take notes and then retranslate it to English.
Mm-hmm.
You just have it in English, and then I'm sure you could just ask it to take it to Spanish and send them a note from that too.
Absolutely. You can have them send out full emails if you needed
Yeah.
it. I mean, the beauty of it that I see is that it's not just facilitating for people that don't have the skills. If you have the skills, it's just supercharging your capabilities, right? Like for me, like I speak Spanish, I speak it fluently. There's some words that I may not understand. There's technical terms for particular industries that are brand new. I mean, I'm learning those things on the fly. But AI makes it that much easier because I can get all of that detail. I can download all of that information, and I can use it as just additional data points for the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, back to that thing of seeming more intelligent, I guess,
Yeah.
or at least more educated in what you're talking about. But I think in general, I would just say that, look, if American companies are trying to grow, you have to grow beyond your borders, right? The market is huge, and people want to attract, customers from the U.S., and they don't really know how to do it, So I think it's opening up a whole slew of buyer opportunities that now companies that are here at Geekdom, that want to do more business beyond just Texas. They want to do business in other states, do business in other countries. I mean, that's a complete possibility.
Especially if you speak Spanish.
Particularly, sure.
Especially in Texas and San Antonio.
Right.
I think it's easier to go across the border south than it is sometimes to even head further and deeper into the American market.
I mean, it's crazy that Mexico City is 2 hours on a plane. Monterrey is an hour.
Yeah.
Obviously we know the border's so close, but we don't really appreciate what that means because no one really, let's go to Mexico on vacation. Man, there's so much. There's so much more available, business-wise, in Latin America. And look, Mexico is one of the largest, one of our largest, or probably our largest trade partner. Brazil is huge, but Brazil's further away. Yeah. But Mexico's right there, right? So there's a lot of opportunity, and because the population is so highly concentrated in around Mexico City, which is like, I think I've mentioned this in the past, like 70% of the total population is in one city.
Like 20, 30 million people?
20 million, yeah. I mean, and not to say that there aren't other markets, but, within Mexico. The point here is that internationalization and the opportunity to do so, especially right now, is a big opportunity for even small businesses, right? I mean, to do the outreach, to find new customers that aren't necessarily in the U.S. it's just not a foreign concept anymore. Now it's, I think, something that even small businesses, particularly where we're situated, if a company wants to grow, I mean, the easy answer is start doing business in Spanish. Most people say, oh, no, we can't. We don't have the ability to speak Spanish in the company, or we don't have the ability to support that type of customer. I'm like, okay, well, that type of customer is coming here.
Yeah.
They're actively moving here.
Some AI, some ChatGPT.
Right?
You don't have to service them fully. You might have one person that's in support that knows how to talk.
Correct.
Have them go through it. Have them AI the notes and send it over. I think it's an easier and easier answer to your point.
Agreed. And the truth is like, look, if you don't have someone that speaks Spanish in San Antonio, I mean, you can throw a stone and probably hit 4 people that speak Spanish. So
I'm sure somebody on the team knows how to speak Spanish. They just didn't tell you.
Right.
On the first go.
Or you can find someone that can do it or can facilitate or whatever the case may be. So, I just feel like there's a lot of cross, pollination, I think, between AI and the move for internationalization. And, like, to be bluntly honest, AI is being adopted in Latin America faster than it's being adopted here. And that could just simply be that it's easier to, infiltrate a much smaller pond
Yeah.
You know, when you have fewer people doing it, but it's still a smaller pond. Yeah. Here, we've got lots of people doing it, but this is a very, very big country.
That's very true.
Exactly. So anyway, I think, you know, we can continue talking about these things moving forward in the future. But I just think as soon as we start seeing these things popping up in the news, there'll be plenty more to talk about on this.
100%. And we're going to get on a better cadence ourselves, and we're going to sprinkle in some interviews. We're doing some other stuff with other folks that we'll introduce. And then, you know, if you're listening, you can go to the boost.fm. We'll have all the notes in there, the transcriptions if you want to go read that, all AI-driven transcriptions.
That's right,
but please follow us on the YouTubes, on the Spotifys, on the Apple Podcasts, all the places that you get
the webs,
your podcasters from there.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.